Hi, I'm Steve. Welcome to the American Garage. Welcome back to the American Garage. Let's take a minute and replace a timing belt, water pump, and thermostat on an Audi A8 4.2 liter engine. The steps involved in replacing the timing belt is first we have to remove the timing belt covers. Next, we remove the serpentine belt. After the serpentine belt is off, we'll take off the tensioner as well. Let's remove the torque dampener next. Now, let's put the engine at top dead center and install the cam lock. Let's remove the crank pulley next. Okay, so we've made quite a bit of progress so far. I turned the engine until I had my crankshafts or my camshafts lined up for my bracket. I put my bracket on here. The important thing that you need to remember is that these two sprockets and the crankshaft are in the same location when you take the belt off and put the new one on. Alright, now it's time for us to take the bracket off and start taking all the pieces off. Okay, let's release the tension on the the pulley. Now we can remove the tensioner. There's the old one. Now we'll remove this rider pulley. Up. Now let's remove the belt. With the belt out, now it's time for us to take out the water pump and the thermostat. We need to take the thermostat out from behind here. So we'll take this piece off. And here's our thermostat. Right here. This is the piece that started all this mess on this car. This one is stuck in the closed position. It won't open. So we're going to test it by putting it in 200 degrees temperature water on the stove and see if it opens for us. My guess is that it won't open. I cleaned everything up here and we're ready to go in with the new parts. We took a Scotch-Brite and cleaned the surface where the gasket for the water pump is going to go. Now, I did some research online, and there seems to be two strains of thoughts about the gasket around the water pump and the thermostat as well. One is to put it dry, that the type of gasket it is made to not use any RTV or any kind of sealant. The other is to put some sealant on there. But among the Audi technicians, most of them say put it dry. If you put any sealant on at all, put a very, very, very small amount. Basically just rub it between your fingers, rub over the gasket, let it dry, and wipe most of it off. Okay? Otherwise, what will happen is the RTV will get into the coolant system and it will clog up the heater core or something along the way and make a mess down the road. So they say, unless you really, really need it, don't put any. So we're not going to put any sealant on, but we made sure that we Scotch-Brighted the opening around the water pump, so it should be ready. Okay, let's start putting her back together. First, we'll put in the thermostat. Make sure that you put this little valve face on the top, and make sure that this part is facing out. And I got the O-ring in there too. Next, let's put this in place. And the new water pump. Then it's time to put all the various pulleys and tensioners in. Now all the pulleys are in, but just loosely tightened. So let's put the timing belt in next. Got our timing belt back in place. I put my bracket on to make sure that my cams are aligned. My sprocket down here is not moved at all, so I know everything is in time. Now it's time to tighten everything up to the correct torques for everything, according to the specifications in the manual. And then we're ready to put her back together. Here I'm using a 5mm Allen wrench to make sure that the gap between the tensioner body and the tensioner arm are correct. Let's turn the engine over 2 times by hand and make sure that the gap remains at 5mm. Next, let's install the main crank pulley and reinstall the timing belt covers. The torque dampener goes back in place now. along with the serpentine tensioning pulley. Next goes the serpentine bell. Okay, now we put it back together. And we connect all the hoses and wires. When you work on a complicated car like this, you might want to make yourself a list of everything that you do as you do it. And then, when you put the car back together, mark off everything on the list. And when you get finished, everything should be crossed off. This way you know you didn't forget anything. Tighten down all the bolts. After all the steps have been completed, we'll put the car back on the ground after the wheels and tires have been put back on, put new radiator fluid in the car, and get ready to start it. Another successful project on the American Garage. Until next time, we'll see ya.